Good evening. You're watching India Prime with me, Sana Khan. Over the next half hour, we go in depth into big news stories unfolding in India. This evening, we discuss a phenomenon that keeps getting deadlier year after year, impacting millions of Indians: the heat wave. Even as the hottest months of May and June are yet to set in, 2 people have died from a heat stroke in Maharashtra. Higher daily peak temperatures and longer, more intense heat waves are becoming increasingly frequent globally due to climate change. India too is feeling the impact of climate change in terms of increased instances of heat waves, which are more intense in nature with each passing year and have a devastating impact on human health, thereby increasing the number of heat wave related casualties. Over 1,600 people died in India due to extreme weather conditions last year. Are we then staring at another unforgiving summer? As Indians head into summer, what can be done to save those who are at an immediate risk? Or is it already too late? We will talk more about this in detail, but first a look at this report.
These are unusual days for most parts of India. Every year, this is the time when temperatures begin to rise. But this year, many parts of India are baked in scorching heat. On Wednesday, a place called Bhira in the Raigarh district in the western Indian state of Maharashtra recorded 46.5 degrees Celsius, something that is seen in the month of May when summers are at their peak. Thursday was no better, with Barmer in Rajasthan recording 43.4 degrees Celsius. What is worrisome is that the hill stations of North India, usually the last resort for people who want to escape the scorching heat, were searing at temperatures 8 degrees above normal. A look at the temperatures in the end of March clearly makes for a disturbing reading. While the maximum temperatures have risen from 2012 to 2017, the minimum temperatures have remarkably risen by as much as 5 degrees for Pune and Shimla. Intense heat waves are not uncommon in India, but what is surprising and is a cause for worry is the fact that this has come too soon this year.
ओवरऑल जो स्थिति है, बहुत सारा एरिया जो देश का है वो हीट वेव की ग्रिप में है। अगर मैं राज्यों के नाम बताऊं तो खास तौर से राजस्थान, मध्य प्रदेश और उससे लगा हुआ जो विदर्भा है और नॉर्थ मध्य महाराष्ट्र है, गुजरात का कुछ हिस्सा है। अगर हम फोरकास्ट की बात करें तो ये हीट वेव आगे 2 से 3 दिन रहेगी, पर ये 2 दिन के बाद में इसमें जो थोड़ी जो इंटेंसिटी है उसकी कम हो जाएगी और एरिया भी कम हो जाएगा।
The year 2016 was the warmest year in a century, with the country 0.91 degrees warmer than the 1963-1990 average. This year, the IMD has warned that the above normal temperatures can be expected in many Indian states. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, to talk more about this, Dr. Subrat Sharma, Head of Climate Change from the Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment and Sustainable Development. He joins me from Uttarakhand. With me here in the studio is Ella Smetacek, Wildlife and Environmental Conservationist. Thank you both of you for joining me. We're also hoping to be joined by Neha Sinha, an environmentalist, in just a bit. But Dr. Subrat Sharma, let me start by asking you, temperatures touching new highs every summer. How much of this is a worry?
You can say it like bloom, heart, sensation and adaptation. All these things, these temperature rise carries. Plants and animals are responding to this. We have early blooms in many trees. We have early appearance of many insects. Then further next is the heart, which means it's a bond. Every hot thing has to burn something if this caution has not been put. If you will realize that this phenomenon of erratic behavior in the weather is quite common these days. Just a few days back, on 20th, we had a very heavy snowfall, 11th and 10th March. Right now, we are experiencing highest temperature for past few. It means it's a lot of worry, and it's a caution for the adaptation right now to take right measures.
Right. These inconsistent weather patterns, Ella, mild winters, scorching summers, and we don't know yet about the monsoons, which will be, according to the Met Department, subnormal. What's that warning that one's missing, perhaps?
I think there have been so many warnings all through. A few people still choose to dig their heads into the sand and pretend that climate change isn't happening. but it's hitting us in the face, especially in India, because we have hundreds of millions of people being affected by drought. Forget about the farmers who are killing themselves on a regular basis. The news don't even take those things on anymore because it's happening so much. But our forests are depleting, and that, I think, is one thing that the government could do to stop it. We are losing at least 400 acres of forest a day in India, every day.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes. And are we doing anything about it? No. We have mining, we have really irrational sort of highways being put through forest reserves, we've got flyovers, we've got deforestation, we've got corrupt bureaucracy. Where do I stop?
It seems that most of the crisis is being brought upon ourselves then, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is brought upon ourselves. It's not just the way we are treating our forests. We really don't care about how much the Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are polluting either. We don't pay much attention to how the rivers are being affected. We don't pay much attention to just how the industrialists are getting away with a lot of things. And I'm sorry, that just cannot continue. We just cannot continue to turn a blind eye to all of this.
Right. Dr. Sharma, every year we see high temperatures. The following year tops the previous year's records. And what can one do? We see that, people around us, they seem to adapt to those kind of drastic changes and life goes on.
Very rightly, my fellow participant has said that these are the signature of our own activities. But right now, you cannot blame in India alone. If you will realize that this year, Britain has also received the highest temperature in the March for the last 5 years. This is a global phenomena, and everybody, including myself, is responsible for this. If we have to reduce our carbon footprint, and our country has a intended national commitment at global level with the Paris Agreement. So this is not that everything is on the bad side. We are progressing also. And I believe that for us, it is very right commitment comes from the very individuals.
All right. Also, Ela, we've talked about the crisis itself. Let's talk a bit about the kind of impacts that one sees. We're talking about high temperatures. We've already had cases of 2 people losing their lives due to these kind of conditions, but a huge impact on the environment and the wildlife, which cannot be ignored.
Absolutely. We're losing over 50,000 species of insects every year. That's just insects.
We're talking about India or
all over the world?
Globally.
Globally.
Okay.
As far as India is concerned, I think that the Prime Minister should take it upon himself to change the way we've been so lax in, the way our industrialization is affecting the global warming scenario. I mean, I know that we're, sort of allowed a certain amount of emissions because we're supposed to be a third world country.
Right.
But we can't say, okay, the Americans did it in the 1920s, so we get to do it now. We can't do that. We can't afford to. We're going to die. That's the problem.
Right. Dr. Sharma, would you agree with that? Talking about India, a developing country, and the kind of industrialization and the economic, functions in the country are concerned, do you think India perhaps is not doing enough?
No, I don't agree with this. As our global commitment is concerned, we are very much determined to that. But the question is that you are looking for that it's a debate on development versus something, climate change.
Sir, we're losing your audio.
I mean to say that we are what is this debate? Debate is on the impact of a high temperature rise, unusual.
That's right.
That's right. Not versus the development activities. Right. So right now, what we the first thing is that we have to prepare for a global phenomena. We have to, you very precisely said that 2 people died just because of the heat wave in the March. What we are thinking in the coming months, we should have a preparedness at all levels. Are we providing alarms? are we sending this message?
Dr. Sharma, let me ask you in another way. Do you think that what we are seeing right now in terms of spike in temperatures, is it linked to climate change according to you, or is this is just a freak phenomena according to you?
No. This erratic behavior is a result of climate change.
Right.
On 10th and 11th March, you receive snowfall, and on 30th March, you declare it that the warmest year for the last warmest month in the last 5 years.
Right.
So this is erratic behavior. But you must realize that this decade, after 2000, you realize that there are more hot years are coming. So it's been this coming as a regular phenomena. Continuously, 14, 15, 16, 17, we are also experiencing. We don't know that how this monsoon will behave.
Right.
So we have to make a preparedness for this.
Okay. Ela, we all seem to know about the crisis at personal levels, but as a collective unit, why is it that not much can be done about it, at a community level perhaps?
Yeah, we do have a lack of cohesion, I think, in all our communities all over the country. In the hills, I'm trying to set up rainwater harvesting systems for villagers to help them with, their daily requirements for water, as well as to maintain groundwater levels. But it's really difficult because there's no cohesion. They don't want to collaborate with each other. So we need to create a sense of unity, perhaps, in our smaller villages.
And sensitize people towards the impacts.
Absolutely. Education, again, we always come back to that word. But education is really important, and water is the most important thing that we have to put our minds to, and I'm hoping that this year we get this project on the road, but it's really hard.
Right. You're finding it tough. Dr. Sharma, now talking about where you are, Mukteshwar in Uttarakhand recorded the high temperatures of 28 degrees at this time of the year. Now, as a citizen, of the state, of the, city you're live from Almora at this point, does that worry you?
Yeah, certainly, because it means you require more energy for conditioning. So it's a very high impact on the national energy service and the providers. And on other sides, but we have observed in this area that this year very low water flow in the rain-fed streams and rivers. It's mean your energy water potential is going to be down for the next coming months if the same phenomena agree.
Right. Also, Dr. Sharma, I'd like you to enlighten our viewers a little bit about the long-term effects, perhaps even catastrophic, if we talk about global warming in the years to come.
Sensitization is the very first thing for our viewers, that global climate change has a very, very high impact on our lives. If this pattern continues,
Right.
Hello?
Right. We can hear you, sir. Please go on.
If this pattern continues, so we have a very high energy demand and very low water availability in the summer months when this demand is on a peak side. The second thing, we have to adapt, especially our rural people, because there are changes in the weather, shift in the monsoon or rainfall patterns, and less snow during the winters.
Right, right. Ela, now IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it has already warned that warming of the climate system is unequivocal. It has said that owing to human activity, gas emissions in India, that's primarily CO2, rose by about 70% in a span of, I think, 1970 to 2004. Now, that's a big increase.
Yes, we really need to work to stop that. One way is dairy farming. I think it's an absolutely dysfunctional ideal that dairy farming would help our economy. It's in the long term, it's affecting our forests, because in order to feed that many cattle, we need to grow that much food.
Right.
That's all of the world. So dairy farming is one thing where the government ought to crack down. It's a waste of resources, it's a waste of manpower, and it's definitely affecting the CO2 emissions.
All right, that is perhaps just one of the many factors that contribute to the CO2 emissions. Joining me right now is Ms. Neha Sinha. She's an environmentalist. Thanks so much, Neha, for joining us. We are talking about this unusual condition that we're witnessing year after year, the heat wave condition. What's your reading into what's happening, the phenomena that we're all witnessing?
Yeah. You know, all over the world we are seeing the impacts of climate change, and even though we have not had any consensus on what climate change really means, there is at least consensus that global warming is one of the biggest outcomes of climate change. For a hot country like India, this is really bad news, and we already have had a couple of deaths in the past month or so, and this is only going to get worse. Another outcome of climate change is really that you can't predict what's going to happen. So we may as well be looking at a scenario where we don't know if it's going to, how long a heat wave is going to last and how severe it's going to be. So for a poor country like India, for a hot country like India, it is only going to get hotter, and it's going to become more difficult to predict really what happens to the weather from this point forward.
All right, that itself is a scary thought, you know. If you could tell us a bit about the heat islands that exist in the cities, shed some light on that particular concept as well, Neha.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a very important question. Across the world, especially in metropolitan cities, big cities with a big carbon footprint, you're seeing this phenomena of heat islands really growing. So heat island is basically when heat gets trapped in a city. So if I were to take the example of Delhi, we know that air pollution is really bad in Delhi, and you have so many cars being added every single day. The cumulative impact of all the carbon emission, or the cumulative impact of the huge carbon footprint we have kind of circles over the city. It gets very hot, and there is the classic greenhouse effect that you have. And not only does it get hot over the city, the heat remains trapped over there. So now we're seeing this problem of heat islands where you have a city that's 2 to 3 degrees much hotter than any of the surrounding environs. And Delhi is one such city where we're actually facing the heat island. We face it every day, and which is probably why we need more green belts within the city, because otherwise it's going to be a vicious circle of more air conditioning, which is going to lead to a bigger carbon impact and more heating.
Right. Dr. Sharma is also on the panel there this evening, and so is Ela with us. Dr. Sharma, I'd like to come to you at this point, talking about developing economies, talking about the kind of activities that an economy is engaged in terms of energy production, consumption. We all seem to be aware about it, but nobody seems to be doing much about it. Do you think that, you know, perhaps efforts at the community levels, and we talked about this earlier, could help bringing about that change, perhaps in a more solid manner, keeping aside what the government's doing?
Community behavior is certainly very important in this case when we want to combat the climate change impacts, especially generating the CO2 footprints. As you said, urban heat islands, if you want to commute with a metro or a common passenger vehicle, so you can reduce your carbon footprints. This is a community initiative, or people can share, 2-3 people can share a single car. Back to rural people, if you blame for them every time, this is not correct. I heard this dairy farming issue, but if you realize that how a livelihood of a person in a village he has to carry. So if you can provide such things like solar energy, so you can reduce your carbon footprints of the coal energy, especially in the electricity sector.
Right.
And community initiatives like you want to do a wasteland afforestation, then get a carbon credit for that, and you can give incentive to the community that if you can do this, we will give you this reward. So that can bring a climate change impacts certainly on a down scale.
Those are some of the very important points, Dr. Sharma, that you laid out for very simple steps, really, but who is doing it and to what extent is also a big question. Ela, coming to you, the government, do you think the government needs to step up? What more is it that the government can do?
Well, speaking of alternative sources of income for locals, villagers all across the country, I think the amount of money that the government pumps into reforestation programs does not bear results.
Okay.
I think that funding ought to go to the local people, like Dr. Said about, giving them incentives, of course, monitoring the progress.
So you're saying the money allocated is enough, but it's not going to the right people?
Absolutely, it's not going. We see it all over. The amount of, I think 6 billion now has been allocated last year after the forest fires. And so I think once local people have an incentive to protect forests rather than to live off them, because they have no other way, obviously, that would really help. I think it would work. It has worked in small pockets. We've seen that in the mountains.
Right.
And I don't see why it should not work on a larger scale.
Absolutely. Now, just telling my guests on the show that as we end the show, I think we all must lay out at least one step from each of you, how to reduce our carbon footprint. But that's going to be at the end of the show. Neha, coming to you, what are some of those factors, if you can bring out for us, that are likely to influence climate change in the long run?
Well, the number one factor really is the burning of fossil fuels. There's no doubt about the fact that as countries want to grow, or countries need energy to grow, or just to sustain themselves, we are burning a lot of fuel. And it's very unfortunate that President Trump, President of the United States, has said that the war on coal must end. He's under the impression that coal should be part of the future, when many people believe that coal is actually part of the past because it's so polluting and it really has such an unkind impact on our planet. The future really is renewable. We have to work towards greater energy efficiency. We have to work towards alternative sources of energy. And Germany is a shining example of this. Germany is a country that does not get a lot of sunshine, but Germany still has a very strong solar power component to its energy mix. And India has so much sunshine. So India should focus on its solar mission, and India should not get sort of influenced by what the US is doing now. It should stick with the Paris Accord and definitely try to work harder towards making in India more renewable energy.
All right, that's very well put, Neha. Also, we have talked about with the other panelists, but getting your thoughts on what you think the government can now do, a little more, in-depth thoughts from you about how the government can help in the present situation. Now, specifically, if we talk about the change in weather patterns that we are seeing in the country at this point.
Yeah, in the short term, we need more public health announcements as to the impacts of heat waves and heat islands. It's rather unfortunate that even in 2017, people have to die because it's so hot. It's also unfortunate that people in our country die because it's cold. So people are basically dying each time there's an extreme weather event. It's rather unfortunate. We need more public health announcements. We need more information out there. So for example, if Delhi is very polluted, the parents of children need to have information about where their children should play, whether their children should go outside, and when it's very hot, what happens? How do the pollutants interact with the temperature, and what impact does that have on the child or the elderly? So in the short term, I would say we need more information. In the long term, of course, it has to be things like more green belts and really tackling our energy mix. We cannot afford to have more coal. We cannot afford to have more conventional power, because it is us we are going to suffer. And as they say, climate change impacts the poorest first. That's something we need to watch out for as well.
Absolutely, and that may well be the case, Dr. Sharma. We're hearing about farmers who are hit by severe drought conditions in southern part of the country. Then we talk of floods all the time, and there is already this year a talk of a below normal monsoon. Do you think all these factors are interrelated, and it's quite obvious at that?
I said to you earlier that these are the erratic behaviors, and these are mostly associated with the climate change phenomena. And these can be generated, such events, by any anomaly across the globe. So certainly, as India is a very big country, expanded on a very different latitudes and longitudes. So we have all mix of weathers. We have a hot dry, we have a cold dry, we have humid. So we have to make people more aware that if these kind of alarms or signals we are receiving at the beginning of a year, so how we have to cope up with that. That actually we are lacking at a large.
Right.
We can make, we
All right.
sensitize the things.
Absolutely.
But we don't make aware.
Absolutely. And my last question to all of you this evening is, if you had to give a message to all those who are watching and perhaps will watch this later, this show, one simple way in which we all can reduce our carbon footprint at this point. Let's start with Ila over here. Ila.
Please stop using any kind of plastic that you don't need. Be it plastic bags for your groceries. Make an effort, it's not hard. Get yourself paper bags or tell your grocer to give you paper bags.
Or just carry a jute bag with you.
Carry a jute bag, you know. Another thing is when you have parties or when you're eating out, refuse to take plastic spoons and plastic. You'll be shocked how much you save in a year.
Right.
That's one way you can really help. And always, please separate your garbage. That's really, really important.
All right, those simple ways. Dr. Sharma, to you, and then we'll go across to Neha. Dr. Sharma.
I will say that just walk as much as you can. Reduce your carbon footprint of fossil fuel and the machinery of your car.
Absolutely, and it'll be healthy as well, right?
Yes.
Neha?
I would appeal to the people of India to go back to the traditional wisdom we have. We don't need more glass buildings. We need our traditional architecture. You know, if you go to the Red Fort, there's a portion of the Red Fort which has this beautiful ventilation because there's this cross of air currents. And our old houses always had passages and windows placed in strategic ways which allowed for ventilation. And we've kind of forgotten that. We're a very hot country, but we're always building glass buildings, and that just has a very big toll on the environment in terms of the heating and cooling it requires. So I would appeal to people to try to go back to sustainable ways. Old Indian ways have a lot of wisdom. So drink khas when you're feeling hot, drink aam panna when you're feeling hot, and try to build your houses in the ways that we've built them traditionally. They're very simple ways, but they're worth revisiting now.
Simple ways, and also doesn't cost that much if you build a house strategically. All right, on that note, I'd like to thank Dr. Sharma,
Yes.
Neha Sinha, Ella Smetacek, all of you for joining me this evening on the discussion. So it does seem there is hope yet. Perhaps we as a society need to change some of the ways in which we work and hope that the government continues to work in the right direction. Thanks all of you once again for joining me. Going to be taking a short break. More news and updates follow in just a bit. Don't go anywhere.